Uh-huh. Yeah, so, I mean, when is my replica Rick and Morty wig and lab coat going to be getting here? I was supposed to receive this 2 weeks ago. Yeah. No, I get that. I frankly, I don't see how it's your business what I'm using it for. No, it's not your. If you must know, it's dual purpose. It can be used for like doing gimmicky mad scientist like cooking videos, but also it could be utilized for doing like a professor, like a nutty professor thing. All right, like I don't understand how it's your business. Okay, look. Okay, yeah, yes. Okay, next week. Good. All right. Thank you. Just make sure I get my replica Rick and Morty lab coat and wig, please. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Moron. Oh. Oh, class is already in session. Oh my God. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. Hi, I'm Professor Bjorn. Welcome to Writing 101. I didn't realize y'all were here already. That's awkward, man. I just had to deal with something, but whatever. Welcome to Writing 101. I'm your professor, as I said, Professor Bjorn, and we're going to be learning the basics of writing according to me and myself and I. These aren't necessarily like good advice. This isn't necessarily professional advice. This is my advice. These are things I've picked up, things I've taught myself, things I've learned from other people. It's so complicated at this point. I don't even remember where I learned half this shit or how I picked up half this shit. But you know what? I did, and I'm going to teach y'all. Starting with our first lesson. Steak. No, not that steak. Nope. No, that's the same picture as the first time. No, okay, when I wrote this joke, I didn't think about how to visually represent steaks, like, in the context of a story, until I realized I couldn't do it. So that's just a blank image. But we're talking about stakes in a story. Oh no, the villain is going to blow up the whole world. Oh my God, could the stakes get any higher? Oh my God, here comes a villain. He's gonna blow up the multiverse. That's every conceivable world blowing up all at once. Alright, so let's get down to the basics here. What are stakes? Stakes are the consequences of the actions within your story. That's at least the definition I like to use. Now, that's not exactly right, but I think that's the closest you can get without getting really convoluted and getting into the weeds of the whole thing. So, when you boil it down, stakes are just the consequences the actions of your characters have. I.e., let's use an example. If Batman fails to stop Darkseid, Darkseid's gonna blow up the whole world! Oh no! I live on the world! So, the consequence of Batman failing to stop the bad guy would be the whole world blowing up. Thus, the stakes are the world blows up. Now, stakes can be anything from, oh no, a character's gonna stub his toe, to, oh my God, all of conceived reality will implode. And really, you have a myriad of stakes in between those. Like, it could be anything from, in a rom-com, the characters are going to break up, to, in an action series, the main character could die. Or in superhero stories, as I've said 1,000 times already, oh no, the whole world's going to blow up. There's a lot of different stakes. So, let's start with a simple graph I have created. I haven't seen this graph put anywhere else, but it's so simple and logical that I think at a certain point someone else must have made it. So I'm not going to take credit for this, but there's our graph. As you can see, it's a simple reverse bell curve. Or, actually, I think it's just a bell curve. I don't even think you call it a reverse bell curve. I like to call it the hump of stakes. And let me explain the hump of stakes. On the y-axis, you have audience interest. And on the x-axis, you have the level of stakes, meaning increasing things at stake. As you can see, the bell starts low. This is for where stakes are, oh no, the characters won't get back together at the end. When character stakes are so low that, the audience isn't really that invested, because at the bottom of the day, right, the stakes presented aren't that extreme, right? They're not high enough that the audience is of any concern. Certain stories, your suspension of disbelief increases or decreases based on the genre. For example, superhero stories clearly have a higher suspension of disbelief as well as sci-fi stories. Thus, the level of stakes can be higher. Some stories like rom-coms need to be down here at the end of the bell curve. The stakes cannot be higher than, oh my god, the characters aren't going to get back together at the end. That's where the stakes should remain. And for those stories, those stakes can feel very intense, and your audience can get deeply invested in the two characters getting together at the end. Which is why, if you notice on my stake graph here, this side of the bottom of the bell curve actually is higher than this other side. We'll get to that later. So, as your stakes increase, audience interest increases too, until you hit this little zenith here. This is where I think the stakes are at their finest. The stakes are high enough that your audience is engaged, but not too high that your audience doesn't believe you'll actually pull the trigger on the stakes. And we'll explain that when I talk about this other end of the bell curve down here. So, what are stakes that I think are at that zenith point? Where do I think this is the ideal stakes for most fiction? I think that the stakes that belong here are friendships dying, things like that. But like realistically so, like some kind of character relationship falling apart. You would be shocked by how much emotional value you can get out of using that as a stake. You barely ever see it, right? But when it's executed well, having character relationships fall apart as a stake works super well. You see this very often in Game of Thrones, television shows like Succession, where the stakes aren't that the characters are going to die. The stakes are that the characters might lose their relationships with each other. But for those who've ever watched those shows, and the characters dying, obviously I'm not talking about Game of Thrones, I'm talking about like Succession. But for those who have watched those shows, you know how intense those situations can feel, how unbelievably intense those dialogue exchanges feel. And that's because your stakes here are relationships breaking apart. Other stakes that belong here: singular characters dying. Characters we like dying. The best stakes in my opinion. This is a personal opinion, but like, I'll name some examples of where I think this could be done well. The characters dying, right? It's a really hard sell to convince someone that the main character in your series is going to die, or that's where the stakes are at. It requires very, very consistent application of proving to your audience that you're willing to pull the trigger on deaths like that. We'll talk more about this in our character deaths video that will be coming one of my future lessons. I don't know. There's a poll up right now to decide what my next lesson is. So if you want to hear about that, you can go click that there. But if you are consistent in killing characters, at least frequently-ish in your material, what you write, your audience will be trained like a Pavlovian dog to expect character deaths. Now, what this does for the stakes is fantastic. If you have convinced your audience that you are actually willing to pull the trigger on something like this, then your stakes are almost always right here when you threaten to kill a character. Right where your audience is both engaged and the stakes aren't too high. Because you've proven yourself willing to do it before. The main character is in a battle. Well, normally in something like, let's say Spider-Man. Spider-Man's in a fight. The audience is way down here on the bell curve. Because let's be honest here. We know Spider-Man isn't going to die. Spider-Man isn't going to get hurt. Spider-Man is not going to be killed. The worst thing that could happen to Spider-Man, which is why I think Spider-Man is best here on the bell curve, is Spider-Man could be emotionally injured or could lose a relationship with the character. You'll notice in Spider-Man comics that tends to be where Spider-Man is at the best, because we know Spider-Man will never die. But if you've proven to your audience at least a couple of times that you're willing to kill a character consistently, then when your main character is in peril, there is actually an intense feeling of dread in your audience because you might just pull the trigger. This is something I do a lot in my own writing. I very carefully cultivated a reputation in my YouTube scripts for killing everything. If it moves, it dies. That's how I do it. And that's why I think often when you write with that mindset in mind, your fight scenes, your combat engagements feel a lot more intense to your audience. The stakes are higher in their head because they actually buy you can pull the trigger. So threatening to kill one character is a stake that the audience can buy. What's another stake at the zenith point? Killing a small group of people. Again, this requires you to have proven that you can do it. If you want an example, The Dark Knight. In The Dark Knight, spoilers for The Dark Knight, it's a very old movie at this point, but it's, closing in on 15 years old, 16 years old now? But In The Dark Knight, Batman is faced with a dilemma when Joker straps 2 bombs to 2 boats. He says, I'm going to, that they each have a dead switch that they can press and blow up the other boat and spare themselves. And in the movie, when you watch it, it feels intense because you believe very strongly that this boat of people could die and nothing would change in the overarching story, right? Joker would prove his point and we, the audience, would see a microcosm of humanity. It is very believable to you, the audience member, that those 2 boats could blow up and nothing would change, like, relative to the world. Now, let's discuss briefly about when you have too many people's lives at stake. I.e., oh no, they're going to blow up the world. Golly, I live there. Oh no. Here's the problem with these stakes. You know, I know, everyone knows they're not going to blow up the world. And if they do, it would be lame. Let's be real here. If you blew up the earth, everyone would just be like, oh, it's so subversive. The hero loses and everybody dies. How original. Hey, you know what else that is? It's just a bad story. Why do I want to hear a story about someone losing horribly and everyone dying and there being no point to any of it? That's just a lame story. So, your audience inherently knows you are not going to blow up the earth. So if your stakes are ever a city will be blown up, the world will be blown up, or a country will be blown up, or the entire team of superheroes that the whole franchise is about will die, no one will ever buy those stakes. So your audience interest naturally decreases because your audience isn't worried. They know you're not going to do it. I know you're not going to do it. Everyone knows you're not going to do it. Even the writer knows he's not going to do it. So why even have that be the stake? You know what would be much more interesting? Oh no, the world will blow up unless this other character sacrifices themselves. Then your audience is engaged because you're here. The stakes aren't the world is going to blow up. The audience knows that's not going to happen. But they might just have to sacrifice that one guy to do it. And automatically you've taken world-ending stakes and made them more inherently interesting. Now, this isn't to say you can't do world-ending stakes. I've seen it done. And as you can see, there's a zenith here, and then there's a pit down here. But there's this little area in between here where the bell curve is still high in currents. Let's talk about stakes on that front. Thanos snapping half of the population. This I can buy. Thanos snaps half the population, half of all people vanish, but the world would keep moving on. This is something the movie could conceivably do and the franchise could continue. In the back of your mind, you wonder, could Thanos do it? But no, the writers wouldn't pull the trigger on that. But it's not the whole world blowing up. So you're here on the zenith. Your audience is engaged, but they're not maybe as engaged as they would be if you were just threatening something smaller. However, Infinity War pulls the trigger. They kill half of all the humans at the end of that movie. So the audience intention actually goes up to here. In the next movie, because they proved willing to do it once, when Thanos threatens to recreate Earth or whatever he's threatening to do in that movie, you fall down to this category here, because Thanos says he's going to undo the Earth. But because previously you had him kill half of all people, audience interest is somewhere in the middle here. They're actually wondering, hey, is there some insane way where Thanos could actually do this, even though we all know in the back of our head he won't? So you're still on this end of the bell curve, but it's possible. I'm harping on this bell curve a lot because I think this is a great tool for writers. Doc, think about your stakes right now. Are your stakes down here? Oh no, 2 characters might break up, or someone could get cut, or these friends are going to be mad at each other for a while. Are your stakes here? Relationships permanently ruined. Characters learning to hate each other or becoming villains. Someone dying or small groups of people dying. Or are you down here? Oh no, the world is going to blow up. And honestly, the bell curve should just keep plummeting down here, because these days we're here at stakes. All conceivable worlds are going to blow up. Like, come on. Come the fuck on. I know, Marvel. I know you're not going to do it. Kang the Conqueror's motivation shouldn't be to conquer the entire multiverse. It should be to kill the Avengers. Or kill a couple characters. Something, keep it simple. All my favorite stories keep it simple. Game of Thrones. Your stakes are very rarely in that story that the world could end. Yes, there's the White Walkers, but they're barely a factor in the books at this point. So your stakes are actually your characters that you like could die. And in every fight in that book, or TV show, depending on which version you watch, you are on the edge of your seat because you know damn well they could do it. And that's where I think stakes are. So I think to understand stakes, you have to understand where your stakes should be at. Every writer, please, I'm begging you. I am begging you. Keep your stakes small to medium. Do not go crazy. The world will blow up. Gotham City is going to explode. Shit like that. Brainiac is going to end the world. Here's a great example, dude. The new Suicide Squad game. Don't make your stakes that. The whole point of the Suicide Squad, why they're interesting, is that the stakes are almost always inherently small. Will the Suicide Squad manage a coup of this small South American country? Well, that's not really where your stakes are at with that series. The stakes are, will the head of my favorite squad member explode? And half the time the answer is yes. So audience's attention is here at the zenith. Now there is another issue. If you promise stakes here too often in a continuing series, characters could die, bad things can happen, but you consistently refuse to actually pay off those stakes ever, then your audience slowly starts to drift down here to the bottom of the bell curve. This is a problem. So make sure you always pay off your stakes at least a little bit. The Dark Knight does it early in the movie when it kills Rachel. If you want a franchise that I think has this problem, where something has good stakes levels but slowly degrades them too far, One Piece, the anime. One Piece, their stakes are here. Characters dying, getting hurt, relationships breaking apart. Except every time, no one dies in that series. Ever. You're 400 episodes in and no one has died. So gradually, each time Monkey D. Luffy is in a fight, you start to lose interest. Because you know damn well Monkey D. Luffy isn't going to die. You never buy for a second that Monkey or any of his friends are going to die. In fact, the author finally starts to fix this later in the series by actually killing a couple characters. But by then, the damage is kind of done for me as an engagement, as a viewer. And I know a lot of people like One Piece. But my problem with One Piece is that it refuses to kill anyone until it's too late. And I've already lost interest. Because how am I supposed to feel engaged in the stakes of a fight if I know they're never going to pay that off? So, what have we learned from this lesson? This bell curve, that's it. That's all you learned. Basically, keep your stakes simple, but not too simple. And keep your stakes high, but not too high. There's a happy medium point. You want to keep it right in between there. And also, always remember that you have to, at some point, pay off your stakes. There has to be some consequence for the characters, always. And if there isn't for a long enough period of time in a story, your audience is going to lose interest in the stakes you're claiming and start to slip down here or down into, well, the other way, to being bored because they don't believe you'll actually do it. They lose their suspension of disbelief. They don't think there will ever actually be a consequence to the characters. So remember, keep it in that finite zone. If y'all have any thoughts about stakes or want me to do more, this is kind of a simple topic. There's not really too much to say because it really is just as simple as let's keep it in that narrow. Next week, class, we'll be talking about whatever y'all vote on in the poll I put up on my channel. I think right now, writing plot twists is what is currently number one there. I have a lot to say about that, and I actually have more to say about that than just stakes. So y'all can keep your eyes out for that lesson, and if you have thoughts about stakes or disagree with something I've said here, if you think, oh my god, the world is going to blow up, is a stake that is realistic, let me know why you think that. And maybe you can prove me wrong, and I will make a secondary video where I go down on the floor and pray for forgiveness because I had an ill take. We'll see. All right, guys. I'll see you all in the next one. And remember, this is going to be on the quiz, so make sure you memorize it. All right? I don't want to see any of y'all failing your quizzes. I'm going to be very upset.